Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week joining us from Germany is Robert Briese. Did I pronounce your name correctly there, Robert?
Yes, absolutely. Correct.
So welcome, Robert. Robert is an Agile coach who's seen it all, from startup stumbles to orchestrating massive large-scale Scrum feats like BMW's Level 3 autonomous driving milestone. He's on a mission to simplify the complex and help teams build adaptable, sustainable organizations. As Robert says, buckle up for a wild Agile ride with Robert. So, Robert, that was a short intro. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Thanks, Vasco. I'm very happy to be here. First of all, I'm a big fan of your podcast. Remember hearing it for like many years ago. I went to the obviously like the typical career, starting in development and being a software engineer. And then the usual step is you get promoted to become a project manager, right? And then you do project management work for a longer period of time. And then in 2011, I was working for SAP IT in Berlin, and we introduced the whole Agile thing, the whole concept. And at one point, I had to decide what to do next because there were no project managers anymore. So I had to choose if I want to be a product owner or a Scrum Master. But to be honest, I've tried obviously both roles. I worked first as a product owner, which was more similar, I guess, from my perspective at that time to the old the project manager role, and then to became Scrum Master a couple of years later, and I realized actually how different these jobs are and this work is than what I was previously doing. But also I realized why so many things didn't work in the past, and what I was struggling with, and why I didn't like that much this kind of project manager work. It was kind of a bumpy ride until I figured out, what this way of thinking, how it is completely different, and how I can support as a Scrum Master, basically the whole organization that I'm working with, the team and the organization that I'm working with, to approach product development in a completely different way.
And completely different is what we will explore, of course, during this week with Robert. But leaving maybe the tease there for you guys to think about what does that mean, completely different. Let's dive into one of those hard but also very insightful stories that I'm sure Robert has prepared for us, the story of failure. And of course, Robert, we don't like to focus on failure, but we like to focus on the learnings. However, learnings always come with a context, and that's what we explore here today. So tell us a story of a difficult moment you faced as a Scrum Master. We'll dive into the takeaways and the insights and the learnings later, but first, tell us that story.
Yeah, I guess in the 10 years or so, more than 10 years that I've been working in this environment, I've really seen a lot. From trying to introduce Scrum in a traditional organization within a team that was actually a support group that was supporting different platforms, like an IT support department. That was not really a team, trying to introduce Scrum is obviously gonna create some problems, and might not be the right approach depending on what's your organizational goal there. But that was something that I was really struggling with. And also, I've been in kind of working with teams that had different, personal issues on personal levels and so on. Got into pretty heated discussions in retrospectives. Well, people start yelling at each other. So I've seen like everything, I guess. And maybe focusing on the last one, that was a very, very deep experience for me. Being in such a tension and such a difficult environment within a retrospective, the best thing I could do at that point of time was to remind people of the retrospective prime directive, right? And to make a quick break. That was like all I could do at that moment. But I think with the time I developed additional tools to deal much better with such situations. So, for example, starting with the retrospective prime directive every single time, for at least for the first couple of retrospectives.
Can you tell us
Sure.
what that? I'm sure many of us already know, but just for those who are maybe not familiar with it, can you reiterate what is that prime directive?
Absolutely, yes. Good. Thanks that you pointed me out to that. So the retrospective prime directive mentions that regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at that time, their skills, their abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. That is what the prime directive retrospective.
And in your mind, what informed the use of the prime directive as kind of a priming aspect in your retrospectives? What were the things that you think or what are the things that you think you really get from focusing on that prime directive as the retrospective starts?
Yes, I guess the idea is that you stop, finger pointing on who's to blame, or looking at, failure in people or something like that, instead of understanding that we all came with the mindset of trying to do the best, and we all actually maybe didn't have some information, and that's why we acted based on that. But we truly tried to improve the situation and make the best out of it.
And the use of that prime directive, of course, you started by contextualizing it, that sometimes emotions run high and there's some heated discussions. What have you been observing as you use this prime directive? What are the other behaviors that are actually coming up in those retrospectives? What's been the impact of using that prime directive as the starting point for the retro?
Well, I do think that there's a lot of topics that that can come up from not using the prime directive, like maybe not talking about the elephant in the room, not addressing things that need to be discussed in a team, or actually trying to take a side that I have acted based on good information, while others have work against it, either by not knowing this information or by actually trying to get out the best on their side or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's stuff like that I always see basically happening. where, there is kind of like personal interest in there.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, one of the key aspects of the Prime Directive, when I look at it, like many years ago, we did an exercise with one of the teams that I was working with, where we had to complete a project together for which there was only partial information available. And
Yes.
every team member had part of that information, but no one had the whole information. So that was how the game was set up, so that it is a learning experience, of course. And in the process of setting up the game, the facilitator said, and one of you is actually a saboteur who tries to sabotage the work of the team. And, to cut a long story short, because we didn't know who the saboteur was, everybody was given a role, but nobody knew what the roles of the others were. We ended up calling each other saboteurs. Then we thought that everyone was a saboteur, of course, which was not possible because even the setup was that there was only one saboteur. But when we don't take the Prime Directive, it's like being in that game. It's like we expect others to not want the best, right?
Absolutely.
And when we take the Prime Directive, we reverse that. We expect everyone to want the best. And I think that one of the key aspects I take from the Prime Directive is that it reinforces the aspect that we work together as a unit, not separately.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And this, brings me to a very interesting topic, which I think it's something that you like to call about books, but we can talk it later, because that's one of my favorite books is actually on this kind of topic.
All right. So all of you listening, stay tuned for tomorrow's episode where we'll hear what Robert's favorite book is. For now, Robert, thank you very much for sharing that story with us.
Thanks, Vasco.
Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests help their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.